Today we've got a great revenge story of getting a boss to finally pay up. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, Freezy Day. I'm an ECE in a kindergarten class. I work with a control freak, self-centered, talks crap behind your back to others kind of teacher or coworker. Let's call her Kathy. Every Tuesday and Thursday of May, we're doing something called Freezy Day. For the kinders, they pay 50 cents and they get half a Freezy. I get roughly 5 students with money. The money is being raised for the grade 8 graduation party / class trip. On May 22nd, one student brought in $1.50 and said she wanted to buy 3 Freezies for herself and 2 friends. Told me in the cubby room. On my break, I called her friend's parents and asked, and they said yes. I did all of this without Kathy knowing, as I do the cubby duty and mailbags in the morning, checking for notes and money, storing it, making sure proper change is given back, names are written, etc. Anyways, later in the morning, a student arrives late and parades to the cubby room, proudly displaying $1. He proudly said aloud to the whole class how he brought money for a freezer for him and his bestie because he wanted to buy one for his best friend. Kathy said, "No, we don't buy freezies for our friends." I was like, "That was very sweet of you, child. Hey, I don't mind calling the parents and asking if," and Kathy said, "Yeah, no, I don't want to start this, cause then a bunch of extra money and notes and calls and they'll all start buying for each other. It's just too much to deal with." First of all, I am the only one that deals with all of that. In fact, when the freezies are being handed out, it's during the end of our second lunch when she's not even in the classroom. By the time she gets there, all the kids are on either still packing up or are on the carpet reading books with their bags packed. The kids who bought Freezies are at their lunch spot eating it. The plan? Freezies for my besties. I'm going to call parents of my students during my lunch Monday next week, asking if I could buy Freezies for their children. I'm not buying for all of them, but I'm buying Freezies for about 15 kids. It's the last day of the Freezie sale too. It's mainly the ones who deserve it or those who haven't gotten one yet. The Wednesday before, I'm taking the day off to get work done on a tattoo. I'm also taking that Freezy Day Thursday off to rest. Both days will be taken as unpaid as well to avoid any HR stuff. I already have a substitute booked on both days too. I'll give all the money to the grade 8 teacher the Tuesday before, and the following Friday is a PD day too. No school for children / report cards writing day. Although the substitute will have to do the hard work, a bunch of kids will have Freezies after second lunch during literacy. Kathy's routine and feeling of control will be completely taken off course, and she'll have a bunch of sugar-high children. My point here, the thing that ticked me off, is this money is being raised for the grade 8s. It's for them and their graduation. The children wanted to buy for their friends and were showing kindness, and she had nothing to do with the Freezies. All the work was done by me. And yes, my one student did buy for her 2 friends. I sat with them at second lunch and said not to say anything out loud. They saw what happened to the other child, and I wanted them all to get the Freezies. They understood the assignment. The side-eye game to each other was epic. Happy Thursday, Kathy. Deal with it. Maybe I'm wrong because I've never worked in this environment, but if it's a kindergarten class filled with kids that want to buy treats for their friends at lunch, and that's what's too hard or too complicated to keep up with, like maybe you're not the right person to be working with little kids. Like, I just really don't buy her whole, "Oh, we're gonna have to keep track of extra money, we're gonna have to call parents." Like, you almost kind of have to do some of those things anyways, it's a kindergarten class. I stand with OP, Freezies for all the kids and the friends they want to buy them for. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is, got back at my annoying neighbor. One of my neighbors is a young adult who loves partying out in his backyard at 3 a.m., blasting music and noises at people, so I got a motion-censored sprinkler system and installed it facing the neighbor's backyard, so whenever there's movement in his yard, my sprinkler will blast water towards his yard. Oh, I only activated it during the night. I am a nice person after all. Well, they had a party last night, and I'd activated the system, so when people started coming out, my sprinkler started blasting them with water. I feel like OP has to live in a place where the cops just don't care, because otherwise they would have A, either shut down the loud noise and music, or B, respond to the person who is spraying water over their yard into somebody else's yard. Like, imagine if that young adult was also a Karen, how many calls would be going to 911 with, "The neighbor's sprinklers keep hitting me." Altitude Dog commented, "I have a motion sprinkler, love it. We use it to keep deer from coming through an open space into our yard to munch on our flower beds. We really ramped up our sprinklers when our usual deer friends would follow me up on my front stairs and were getting very bold in the neighborhood. Very small town, very rural. Someone on the block was feeding them. Dangerous for the kids here, a death sentence for wildlife, so more scarecrow sprinklers. Our UPS driver liked it during the summer when we placed one in the flower beds. Hot day, he'd get a nice cool blast." Every time I read these posts, I'm applauding the solutions and thinking back on some of the neighbors we had. Great ones that last 10 years, and so thankful. Our next story is, "Sorry man, but he's just a cat." Posting this on behalf of my partner's cat who's not very good on the computer. When I was about 21, I moved into a household with 5 other people, including my partner. Only one parted on bad terms, Andrew. We all came from broken homes, but my partner and I had slightly more stable footing, so we helped a few of our friends out of abusive situations and aided in moving them up to where we live, where the standard of living and access to treatment is generally much better. My partner personally drove Andrew from Missouri to the West Coast with all his belongings and his hound Harper. He hadn't asked about moving up with Harper, we just agreed because we knew what situation she was in before. Most of us were not dog people, some having very bad experiences prior, but Harper was a sweet girl and we loved and treated her like our own. She had been neglected by Andrew's family and we all wanted her to be okay too. Unfortunately, Andrew had a habit of also neglecting Harper. She hadn't been spayed, so she would bleed around the floors and furniture in the initial shared apartment we helped him move into, and would defecate and urinate on the floors because he didn't walk her enough. The main reprieve was us, mainly my partner, taking her out and even trying to train her, which Andrew for some reason expected us all to do. He would also take so long to clean any of her messes due to being squicked out by gross things, which, newsflash, any pet owner will have to deal with, that we often had to clean them ourselves just so we could use the kitchen without stepping in pee or sit on a couch that wasn't smeared with blood. We talked to him about these things. They didn't change. Eventually, we had to send her back to Missouri because we were all moving in together with a couple cats our friends owned, and Harper was known to be violent around smaller animals. I still regret that we weren't able to give her a better life than she had up here, but we simply didn't have the resources. She's not really relevant to the story, but explains some of Andrew's attitude and why we were so averse to him getting a cat or interacting with ours later on. During this time, he would rearrange people's personal possessions without permission, and after being asked to stop, would throw things at people when he didn't like the conversation, and groped one of our friends when he thought they were sleeping, continuing after their attempt to brush him off. We didn't find out about that until later. Needless to say, after that and some of his other actions came to light, while we were all living in the house together, things became extremely tense. He wanted to get a cat. The rest of us said no, as it was our house as well, and he showed he couldn't take care of the dog he said he loved. He'd also had 20 aquatic animals that all died under his care, so going smaller wasn't working out either. I know this number because he would send the group chat a message every time a fish, shrimp, or frog died, and he would bust to the aquarium shop to get replacements. None survived longer than a month. Still, he was pretty upset that he didn't get a furry friend when a couple of us did, and would keep his door propped open in hopes that a cat would wander in without us noticing, as we weren't cool with him interacting with our pets by that point. At one point, he secretly fed my partner's cat, our protagonist, named Pork, more CBD treats than the dosage recommended, and when Pork got sick and was taken to the vet, he was fine, just nauseous. We demanded he either apologize for once in his goddamn life or pay the vet bill. He paid the vet bill. While giving Pork those treats almost certainly wasn't actually malicious, we'd already made it clear that he was not to mess with the care of our cats, and he had ignored us yet again. Andrew was the only person in the house that Pork would swipe at if he came close, even before that. The landlord was already letting us cut our lease short because he wanted to sell the house, so we were all on our way out the last few months. We just avoided him and kept our pets near us. Like I mentioned, most of us were young and had been pretty bombastically mistreated for reacting normally to situations, let alone retaliating, so we all just wanted to exit as quietly as possible and never look back. In a house full of doormats and pacifists, Pork did not get the memo. One day, Andrew comes home while we're watching TV in the living room. He retreats into his room as usual, but is back out in a second looking horrified and enraged. Pork had wandered into his room, courtesy of Andrew keeping the door open for exactly that reason, and had taken a fat, nasty crap on Andrew's pillow. Andrew didn't like dealing with gross things, and of course, we're responsible pet owners, so if our pet makes a mess, we'll clean it up. Thus, my partner and I went in and collected the mess, doing our best not to bust our butts laughing as Andrew stood in the doorway fuming. There was nothing he could do about it. Andrew may have been neglectful, but he was at least above outright hurting an animal. And as smart as cats are, you can't punish them for something hours after it happened and expect them to learn. Plus, Pork didn't need to learn anything. He's never ever defecated in anything but a litter box, and has never done it since. Taking a massive dump right where Andrew rested his head every night was not an accident. Additionally, if Andrew wanted his own cat, that was just something he might have to deal with someday. Tough crap, so to speak. That's it. That's the whole story. Just a little sweet victory that none of us asked for or expected, which Andrew could only stand there and accept. Pork was king for the rest of our stay at that house. We kept him far from Andrew after that, and eventually we were all able to move out and on our separate ways. Looking back, I wish I had done more to protect my friends or help change Andrew's behavior so that he wouldn't hurt anyone else in the future. Past that, I wish I'd personally taken a deuce on his pillow, although I know the consequences would have been rough for my whole friend group. We all knew that, so we chose not to pull any petty crap. If not for Pork, the only satisfaction we would have had was that Andrew was finally gone. To this day, we all still praise Pork for his small but brave and noble deed, to which he stares back with his big, stupid eyes, just happy to be able to relax with everyone again. Now, I don't want to be like a cat skeptic or anything, and I know cats have like a lot of personality and whatnot. They're smarter than their disinterest makes them seem. But surely it can't be like as black and white as, they didn't like this person, so the smell of their bed made them poo on their pillow. Like, it was probably more along the lines of like a weird like territorial marking than it was, oh, I don't like this person, I'm going to intentionally mess their stuff up. Kind of like the unfortunate experience if your cat marks territory the other way, not the poo way. I just remember being told a nightmare from one of my parents where as a kid they had a cat who was just like really feisty and mean. They marked their territory on the stove. And this is understandably before the days of flat top stoves, so it's definitely those wire burners where it just gets completely in there and you're probably never going to clean it out. Like at that point, you might as well just get a whole new stove. Soccer Mom 9939 commented, I was renting a room at my aunt's house while I was going to university. I inherited a cat through the distribution system while waiting for the owners to be ready to take her in. My young cousin, 12-ish, wanted her to be his so bad, she didn't care for him. I had all the kitty stuff in my room, food, litter box, water bowl, etc. One night, he decided to take her into his room and he closed the door. He didn't take any stuff for her. I was already asleep when this happened, so I didn't know until the next morning that he woke up in the middle of the night to a cat peeing on his head. Oh my god, I laughed so hard. He never did it again, and she still avoided him after that. Catty Pig commented, LOL, I did this as a kid when we got a puppy. I wanted her to stay in my room with me all night and she wouldn't, so I shut the door so she wouldn't leave. She ticked all over my room and I got in trouble the next day, deservedly. Our next story is, steal my seat? How about a crop dusting? I, 33-year-old female, just got off a 7-hour cross-country flight and I wanted to share this story before I go pass out. I was flying Southwest, so there are no assigned seats, and I was in B boarding group. I went towards the back of the plane so I could get an aisle seat since I'm fairly tall. It was a completely full flight, so I knew there would be someone sitting next to me. Enter entitled Karen. She had waited to check in, so she was at the back of the C boarding group. She was upset because at first she couldn't find anywhere to put her massive roller bag and the flight attendants were trying to get her to gate check it. Then she came up to my row and I thought, great, she's gonna take the middle seat. The following dialogue, to the best of my sleepy recollection, occurred. She said, move. I said, what? She replies, I paid for an aisle seat and you're sitting in my seat. Me, more confused, replied, what? She said, practically screaming, "I said I paid for an aisle seat and you're sitting in my seat." I replied, "This is Southwest. There are no assigned seats." She replied, "Are you stupid? I said I need the aisle seat." I replied, "I can get up to give you the middle seat if you want." I stupidly thought that was the end of it when a flight attendant came over and asked her to take a seat. I got up to let her into the row and she immediately sat down in the aisle seat. I tried to protest to the flight attendant, but entitled Karen kept loudly saying she paid for an aisle seat. I know Southwest is switching to assigned seating soon, but they haven't implemented it yet. Now, our flight was already delayed 30 minutes, and I could see all the other passengers looking at me as if trying to say, "Please just let her win. We want to get there as fast as we can." I looked at the flight attendant, and she gave me a pleading look as if to also say, "Please just give her this. We want to get out of here." So, being the fairly passive person I am, I stepped over her, she wouldn't get up to let me in, and sat in the middle seat. Now, I may be passive, but I am also petty. I am also really gassy on airplanes. Normally, I try to contain it and go to the restroom when it gets bad enough and just let it rip there, but I was ticked at entitled Karen and, frankly, ticked at everyone else on the plane for letting her get away with it. So I decided that I was just going to let her rip all 7 hours of the flight. I put on my headphones over the ear and started passing gas about an hour into the flight. And lucky for me and unlucky for everyone else, they were particularly stinky. Every time I would toot, she would sniff, smell it, and then shoot dirty looks at me. I just ignored her and kept listening to my music and reading my Kindle. At about hour 5, she had enough and hit the call button to ask to move. The flight attendant told her we were fully booked and there's nowhere to move her to. Entitled Karen looked even more ticked, but I guess she had seen enough of the internet to know if she threw a fit, she would get arrested when we landed. When we did land, since we were near the back, I gave it one more silent but deadly toot to seal the deal and let her bathe in my stink for a couple more minutes. Do I feel bad that I ruined her flight? No. Do I feel bad that I stank up my row? No. And also, for the first time ever, I didn't have gas pains, nor did I need to rush to the bathroom immediately after getting off my flight. Next time, check in early like the rest of us plebeians, and maybe you'll get a less salty seatmate. Or, to OP's point, maybe if you are so insistent on getting an aisle seat, you pay and book for an airline that lets you actually select your seat. Pretty novel idea, I know. Maybe running into people like this is the gamble you take when you use a low-fare airline. F. Moore commented, "I would have made it a point to get up to go to the loo partway through the flight and let one rip in her face as I was going past. I would probably have done this multiple times. If she had complained, I would just say, well, you needed the aisle seat, but then I am petty that way." Our next story is, she ended up begging me to stop hacking her website. This is my freelance revenge story that happened about 8 years ago, and it was one of the first times I was ghosted without pay. I created a landing page for her elven symbol jewelry store, a bunch of esoteric BS, but I was young and trying to break into copywriting, so I took any deal I could. We agreed on a pure performance deal, so I got nothing up front, but we settled on a 5% performance fee. Her WordPress store was really small and I was aiming to get $300 to $800 out of it, but honestly at some level, I would have been happy to just do it for practice and my portfolio. Long story short, I wrote the landing page and built it inside her WordPress site. She started running some Facebook ads to it, and I was shocked to see that it was actually converting. $120 on day 1, $200 on day 2, $150 on day 3, $360 on day 4. By the end of the month, that landing page had brought in $6,000 in revenue. I honestly thought I had struck gold. $300 in royalties in the first month? I was going to make bank from 2 days of work. Well, predictably, she disappeared the moment I mentioned first invoice. 3 months go by, nothing, no replies to emails, calls go unanswered, she's still running ads. I can see all the sales coming in because I still have access to her website. Then out of nowhere, I get a panicked message. "My site is down. Are you doing this? Please stop." Now, I had nothing to do with her store going down, probably just her cheap hosting. But after being ghosted for months while she made thousands off my work, I knew this could be my one and only shot at getting paid. So, I decided to play along, but I had to be careful. I couldn't just admit in writing that I'm the hacker and threaten her to pay up. What if she went to the police and showed them the messages? No, I knew I had to make her think I was, but not admit to anything at the same time. So I replied, "Sorry, but I'm not going to talk to you until you pay me what you owe me." This turned out to be the perfect level of vague. I never said I hacked your site. I never threatened to keep it down. I just looked suspicious as freak. She immediately called me and asked me what I want. I told her I still have access to her website and Google Analytics. I can see what she made off of the landing page and that I want what we agreed on, 5% of sales from that landing page. It ended up being just shy of $1,500. She said she'll take care of it. We got off the call, I sent her the final invoice, and she wired the money immediately. She then messaged me with a payment confirmation from her bank and asked me to enable her website. It worked! I was shaking when I typed back this reply. "I had nothing to do with your website crashing. You should talk to your hosting provider." I never heard from her again. I love that little reveal at the end. Alright, so here's the secret. I had nothing to do with any of it the whole time. Thanks for the money. I would be so tickled if I were OP. I would be thinking, oh, I'm gonna buy myself something nice. But, not actually doing it because I have to pay bills and rent and whatnot. But it sure would be nice to think about what I would theoretically spend that $1,500 on. Automatic Slide 9049 commented, "This is pure gold. I love a good comeback story for the underdogs. People love to profit from creatives, but not acknowledge the hard work that goes behind it. Many of us get underpaid, undermined, and, well, this story. My best one was someone who was in my female entrepreneur chat. Support groups are such a hoax, to be honest. She ghosted me, paid 5 times what I initially offered, thus got a crappy 2001 looking website, not from me. Came back to me years later, and I told her she would have had to have paid a deposit and 3 times my first offer. Plus, ex-boss withheld my last paycheck because I quit his toxic work environment, kept all my designs, and his business went under the same year. Sucks to suck." Our next story is Package Thieves Faces Eviction. I live in a small apartment building. Most of our neighboring tenants are quiet and no issues. We all keep to ourselves and are polite when we do interact. Tenants in one unit are a bit annoying, loud till late at night, sometimes yelling or arguing. Some are guys in early 20s that are often having friends over and smoking at their back door. We just kind of ignored it, until I'd ordered a package costing about $300. We never had issues with stealing packages, so I didn't think anything of it having it shipped here. It was delivered and I'd received a picture of the drop-off location. It was right at that tenant's back door. Mind you, I went to check as soon as I received the delivered notification, about 30 minutes after posted time. It wasn't there. I went to their door and asked them if they had seen it. They said no, but when one asked me what it was before I could even say, another tenant let it slip what it was. I acted like I believed them and left. I called the cops because it was obvious they had it. Thankfully, the cops got it back for me. I think I might have scared the tenants a little bit, thinking I wasn't going to do anything. I chose not to press charges as it would be a pain for likely only a fine. Instead, I reached out to the landlord and made him aware of everything that happened and past annoyances too. He's now starting to build a case for eviction, and I can't wait to have them out. Update: there might have been other pre-existing issues I wasn't aware of, because just over 24 hours later, they're moving out. How nice is it to have a landlord that actually wants to kick bad tenants out, rather than just continuing to take people's money as long as it's still coming in on time? I mean, how many times do you hear a story of an apartment complex with one bad tenant who makes too much noise or does too many very annoying things, but the landlord does nothing because they pay their bill? Dangerous Dave 303 commented, "Odds are it wasn't the first time someone had an issue with them. The landlord may have been waiting for a sound, legally defensible reason to evict them. If the thieves had simply remembered the 2 basic rules, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, and don't crap where you eat, they wouldn't have had the problems with the landlord." Our next story is, I possibly made my old job shut down. This was when I was 18 or 19, way back in the days of landlines and dial-up. I worked at a small local pizza place, which I won't name to protect myself, where I was the only female. Everyone, including the manager, liked to go outside and smoke during dinner rush and leave me by myself to answer calls, get the drive-thru window, and cook all at the same time, all while dealing with the panic attacks this caused. Then they would come back in and laugh at me and make sexist jokes about me. I finally had enough of this surreal nightmare and quit. That left me plenty of time to play RuneScape. For anyone who hasn't heard of it, it's an online game with masses of people. I had a no life and I also had a grudge, which is a potent combination. So I made a female character whose name was the phone number of the pizza place and just stood around in the most populated place in the game, where all the new players have freshly come out of the tutorial, every single day during what I knew from experience was their dinner rush hours, and spammed, "Call this number for a good time." I used an auto-typer program so I could do this non-stop. Thing is, this pizza place had no seating and was a drive-thru / carry-out only, so 90% of their orders were placed over the phone. It closed down for some reason about a month into me doing this, and when I ran into one of my ex-coworkers, he told me they would shut down because their business had taken such a hit due to constant prank calls that tied up their phone line. Nobody ever figured out where they came from. So you're telling me OP's out here just hanging around in Lumbridge spamming "call this for a good time"? You know, I'm kind of heated because way back in the day, I played a little bit of RuneScape 2 with some school friends, and I remember getting a temporary ban because in the game I said, "Hey, let's go meet up with Adam," one of our other friends, because I said his name and he's a real-life person in the game. How is OP out here spamming "call this number for a good time" in the most populated place in the game, and I get in trouble for saying somebody's name? Solely his first name for clarification. I gotta be honest, I still love RuneScape though. I haven't really played it, I'm pretty newbie, but there's still an old school nostalgia charm to it for me. Troublemaking B commented, "Oh well, this is what happens when stupid bosses crap on their workers. I love this kind of story. Low effort. Oh, me type a few numbers here and there, and boom, one less pizza place in business. Well done." Our next story is, got my boss to finally pay me my way. A few decades ago, my first paycheck job at 13 years old was running an ice cream parlor. Problem was, the owner would delay our pay, often handing out paychecks and cautioning the employees, and me, not to cash them for a few days. The guy and his wife were matching pieces of poo, and I knew the end was near for the business when the ice cream trucks and paper supply vendors didn't show one week. Boss and wife were arguing about money in the back room, and I realized that they were going to stiff all of us again, then go out of business. So that Saturday night, when the ice cream parlor was hopping, I didn't put the money in the safe. One by one, as we got cash for the food, I would call up the other employees and tell them to come in right now to get their checks. Then I cashed them on the spot using the money that was in the till. Boss and the wife showed up on Sunday morning to a filthy shop, a safe full of checks that they wrote and had no intention of ever paying out to a bunch of kids, and my resignation taped to the cash register. Now, I'm not going to pretend to play legal expert or anything, but I don't necessarily buy that what OP did here was completely kosher, but then again, neither was anything the people running that business were doing, so fair play. Also, can I just point out, OP said their first paycheck job at 13 years old was doing this? They had enough awareness at 13 years old to realize how fast this place was going down, and also the ability to pay out everybody's paycheck like that. OP was an extremely bright 13-year-old, and this company almost certainly deserved to shut down. Different Cucumber 53 commented, "I worked on a production line when I was 13, somewhat illegally. We all knew it, but the cash was good. We used to have to go to the guy's house to get the money. I hated this aspect, felt a bit surf-y, and saw him make some quick deductions on the calculator under the guise of income tax. We end up having an altercation and I get thrown out of his house once I tell him that I'm sure the taxman would absolutely love to know about this, and then started getting bullied by the other kids on the production line as they saw it that I was risking all their wages and that they didn't care if he was skimming off of the agreed rate. Anyways, fast forward a few years, and I've done okay for myself, and I get this guy trying to blow me verbally, trying to get some vertical farming scan set up on a bit of land I've got a piece in. Tells me it's the first port of call, first guy he thought of, etc. I get given an NDA to sign to view the plan, and it has the last guy they went to's name still on it. I string him along for months and months and then tell him that I wouldn't be interested in anything he's got his name attached to after how he treated me, and that I now consider ourselves even from the 20 British pounds he stiffed me out of over 2 decades previously. Felt good. Our next story is busy parking lot. My family goes to the dentist on Saturdays. It's normally my daughter and me the first hour, and then my husband and son for the next hour's appointments. This one day, the parking lot was really full as there was a brunch place and a ballet studio in the same complex. Supposedly there was a recital that day. I circled a bit and got my spot, but coming out, I noticed it was even busier. I texted my son to watch for our car and I would pull out as soon as they were there so they could take my spot. We stayed in the dental office until we saw his car, then got in to drive away as soon as he put on his signals to take our spot. This woman that came in afterwards went racing down one of the other lanes and zoomed up and signaled to take our space from the opposite of where my husband was. She wouldn't move even though I waved my hand that someone was already waiting for the spot. We had a standoff. I fully drove my car back into the spot, walked over and handed my husband my keys. My daughter and I drove his car home, and my husband and son took mine home afterwards. The woman was left there looking stunned. I really like this story because it's the kind of creative problem solving that I really enjoy. It's one of those solutions you read and you think to yourself, I could have come up with that. Give me a few minutes in that situation. I would have thought to swap the cars. But there's also that tinier voice in the back of my head like, but would I have actually thought to do that in that moment? Treebeard commented on the post writing, reminds me of one time I had an early event at the state fair, so we got a great parking spot on the street. When we went to leave in the afternoon, there was tons of traffic. We get into our car and someone signals for our spot. Normal, right? It was a parallel parking spot and they stopped in front of us like they were going to back in, but they completely blocked us in. We waved at them, but they wouldn't move. We finally got out of the car, walked away, and they left. The next car understood and let us out. Our next story is, got humiliated in front of the class, waited weeks to return the favor. We were never friends, just the kind of classmates who sat near each other, swapped jokes when it suited her, and ignored each other the rest of the time. One day in class, I said something dumb, not even trying to be funny, just honest, and she saw an opening. Loud voice, smug grin, whole class watching. Oh my god, are you actually that stupid? Laughter, attention, teacher didn't even check it. I just laughed it off, but inside, that stung. You know when you replay something later and think, I should have said something back? I didn't. Instead, I waited. A couple weeks later, we had a group project. She ended up in mine, not her first choice. She didn't do much, but she thought she could still coast off of the work. So when it came time to present, I gave the teacher the version I finished without her part in it. Told them she didn't contribute, gave proof. She looked confused when she didn't get called up, more confused when she got marked separately, and probably the most confused when she asked if I said anything and I just said, "Didn't think you wanted my input. You said I was stupid, remember?" I didn't make a scene, didn't raise my voice, but I still heard someone go, "Dang," from the back of the room. She never spoke to me again. Not to take away from OP's revenge or anything, but if they actually didn't do any of the work, I feel like they kind of just got what they deserved more than OP really getting back at them. Now, it's a little different if it's like Danger Zone 123 commented, wait, did she actually not do anything, or did you remove the part she did and turn that in? Quoting, so when it came time to present, I gave the teacher the version I finished without her part in it. Told them she didn't contribute, gave proof. That's confusing. On the first read, it looks like you left out her part. The gingerbread man commented, this sort of situation happened to my kid. He was working in a group with 3 girls and one in particular didn't like him. He had his share of slides and content pasted in their Google Classroom. When it came time to present, his stuff had been deleted and the girls told the teacher he didn't do anything. Lucky for my kid, Google Classroom shows you who made edits, and all the deletions had the one girl's name on them. He got an automatic 100. She got told not to do it again. Our next story is, want to pay half of minimum wage? I'll make 2 other employees quit along with me. 7 years ago, I needed cash for a new graphics card. I was just a teenager back then. I'd worked with my aunt before, but her place was about 40 minutes away, so I decided to look for something local. Then I found a job posting a couple of blocks from my house, night shift clerk at a convenience store. It paid a few bucks above minimum wage. I applied, got a text back, and went in for an interview. The interview went well, until the end. The manager said she wanted to be clear because a lot of people had quit over pay misunderstandings. Then she hit me with this. For the first month, I would be paid half of minimum wage. After that, I would get minimum wage for another 2 months, and then I would finally get the rate from the job listing. I was stunned and abhorred, but I played it cool and acted like I was totally fine with it. She was so happy, going on about how young people these days don't want to work, but I was different. And yeah, I was different, alright. A few days later, they told me I got the job. I was added to the Kakao Talk group chat with all the clerks and the manager. They made a schedule to cover the 24-hour shifts. Then the manager sent a message saying my first 4 hours wouldn't be paid because it was training. At this point, I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just amazed at how malpracticed this whole thing was. So when the day came, I just didn't show up. 1 minute before my shift, I left the group chat and blocked everyone. About 20 minutes later, I got a call from what I assume was the manager's husband asking if I was coming in. I told him something along the lines of, "Nah, I'm not interested in working for half pay. Good luck though. You guys gonna need it." She was livid, screaming on the phone, yelling about how people like me make her hate youngs. I'm guessing someone had to cover my shift, unfortunately, but I guess that was the final straw, because later that day I saw both the morning and graveyard shifts posted again on the same job site for that same business. So yeah, I didn't even have to do anything big, just dipped, and it made people quit. It exposed a manager who refused to pay fair, legal wages. Is anybody else screaming internally that OP didn't take 5 minutes to send a report about this place to somewhere? This place doesn't need revenge in the form of a no-show. This place needs revenge in the form of getting shut down for malpractice. I mean, anybody who worked there should be entitled to some pretty serious back pay. I mean, I feel like surely there's tons of teens that probably worked for this place that are surely owed so much back pay. I feel like if OP tipped off a law firm, they would be all over this, just trying to get a class action going. Mother Goose 1957 commented, "I hate employers like this." In high school, my daughter got a job at a local cafe. The business owner, female, pulled similar crap. To cut a very long story short, they refused to pay her for the first day, which was a full 8-hour day under the guise of training, which is illegal here. She was also allowed not to take breaks other than to go to the toilet, also illegal. She was told she would be paid weekly. Then, for the next 4 weeks, the boss fobbed her off every week with various reasons why she couldn't pay her, such as, "I don't have the right tax form for you to fill out," "I was too sick to do the pays last night," etc. My daughter was most distressed. She didn't want to quit because she didn't want me and her father to view her as a quitter. We told her we would not think that and it was okay to quit because she clearly was being abused. She quit and told her boss that she could not afford the petrol to come to work if she wasn't being paid. Then she had to fight to get the pay that was owed to her. Eventually, we took her boss to Fair Work Australia and they forced her to pay up. In the meantime, we picketed the cafe, and my husband had a word with the boss's husband, who was an ex-colleague of my husband's. We live in a small community, and I did some asking around. It didn't take long to find out that this woman had done the same to a bunch of other kids and was notorious for not paying her bills. It was no surprise that word started to spread, and the cafe went out of business. Our next story is, wake me up to say I'm off to work? When my ex and I were first married, he worked a 12-hour day, 4 on, 3 off job where he had to leave at like 3:30 a.m. I worked a normal office job and had regular people hours. On his work days, he would wake me up before he left to say he was going to work and the obligatory "I love you." I asked him several times to not do that as I would have trouble going back to sleep. He just wouldn't stop, so I started waking him up on his days off. "Bye honey, off to work. Doesn't my hair look great today?" That stopped him. In a relationship, I feel like this is one of the major tenets you have to respect if you want your relationship to last long term. Sleep is so important. If your partner is not getting good sleep, or especially you are regularly interrupting that, I mean, Lord knows I am a much crankier person when I do not have enough sleep. I just feel like you can come to resent somebody so quickly if they're regularly interrupting your sleep. I mean, I love my dogs dearly, but I'm still pretty livid when they keep regularly waking me up. Coder Joe 1 commented, "Yeah, I had the same issue. Got married, but my wife quit her job. I worked graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. For the first week, she kept waking me at noon after I only slept 4 hours. She even complained, 'You can't sleep all day, I'm bored and lonely.' So I started calling her in the middle of the night to chat during my lunch break. When she complained, I said, 'You can't sleep all night, I'm bored and lonely.' She learned her lesson and became the guardian of my daytime sleep." Our next story is, she woke me up for no reason, so I gave her a reason to stay awake. Betty struck again at 4:47 a.m., not hungry, not in danger, just bored and ready for violence. She knocked over a water glass, launched a sock off the radiator, then sprinted across my chest like she was late for a job she doesn't have. I got up thinking something serious was going on. Nothing. She just stared at me like, "Why are you up?" So I made my coffee, sat there in silence, and planned. Later that afternoon, she was deep in her dramatic nap pose, belly up, one paw in the air like she's floating on a Victorian chase lounge, prime snoring, zero awareness. I walk in with a single sheet of tinfoil, unfolded it, one slow crinkle. She levitated, did a 360, landed like she was confused what planet she was on, then stormed out of the room like I had wronged her. I said nothing. She's been side-eyeing the foil ever since. So if it wasn't clear, OP was talking about Betty the cat. You know, it gave me a bit of a whiplash going from a story about a partner waking you up to immediately into another story about a cat waking OP up in the middle of the night. I'm not ashamed to admit that there was a second where I wondered how their girlfriend knocked over a water glass, launched a sock off the radiator, and then sprinted across OP's chest. Made a lot more sense when they got to the words paw in the air. Thorn312 commented, "One of my cats must be acknowledged when he comes into the room. Usually he does this big yowl at 3 a.m. until I sleepily say hello to him through the curtain. Tiny flat, bed in front room, curtains for privacy. Then he'll jump into his bed and go back to sleep. But he was disowned before, so I would rather be woken up sometimes to say hello to him than have him living out on the streets." Our next story is, broke my bully's fingers. So back when I was in 7th grade, there was a boy who was a general butt to me, shoving me in the halls, making obnoxious comments, and his favorite thing to do, shut my locker so he could get to his. My locker was on top of his throughout middle school, and I had to deal with him between classes. One day, I was more annoyed than usual at his BS, so I decided to give him a little taste of his own medicine. He was perched at his locker, rummaging around. I walked up to him, and once I was sure his hands were out of the way, I slammed the door shut. Apparently, his fingers were not out of the way, and he let out a loud shriek. He kind of cried for a few minutes, and I stood stunned for a few moments before running off to class. In the aftermath, I was called down to the principal's office, and I ended up fracturing one of his fingers and bruising another. Safe to say, he left me alone the rest of the year. Well, you know, I wouldn't advocate for breaking somebody's fingers as payback for bullying, but sometimes you feel like you have to fight fire with fire, right? I mean, I don't know if OP was reporting this bully and the higher-ups, the principals, the teachers, they weren't doing anything. What usually sucks, I find, about situations like these, though, is usually when somebody like OP retaliates, that's when action is finally taken for some reason. Turn a blind eye to all the regular bullying, but as soon as there's that reaction, detention, suspension, how dare you, you need to think about your future, son. The good Richard commented, "My bully broke my nose on the last day of grade 7, and on the last day of grade 8, he waited for me and jumped me in the schoolyard and was beating me up in the high jump pit. The only part I could reach was his side, so I bit him as hard as I could and kept tearing even when his blood was running into my mouth, and he quit. His parents had to take him to the hospital for some stitches. We went to the same high school after that for 4 years, and he wouldn't come near me." Our next story is, they blocked one lane, so I ruined the shoot. I'm driving home from work, I'm on the highway, fancy V8 car in the fast lane going under speed limit. Then there's a separate SUV in the middle lane going slightly faster than the fancy loud car. SUV has a photographer taking flicks from the back. In the third lane, we have a dump truck. I pass the dump truck and merge into middle lane, speed is like 60 and they're going at least 10 to 15 below. Need I remind you, the road is busy and there's a dump truck and folks like me are trying to get home. So the SUV taking flicks in this loud fancy car was just holding up traffic, and this goes on for a good 4 minutes of driving to the point where the third lane merged and there was 2 lanes now, so I had the dump truck behind me, and they're still going below the speed limit. And they know what they're doing. So I try to overtake the fancy car as there was a decent sized gap between it and the SUV. 2 cars worth actually, but as soon as the SUV saw what I was trying to do, they slowed down intentionally and the fancy car sped up a little in the second lane to keep me sort of boxed in. Photographer is waving to me and is motioning me to go back. Guess they don't want my piece of crap secondhand car in their fancy smancy photo shoot on the road. I nearly lost it, dude. I said freak it and I floored it until I was literally tailing the photographer's SUV while tooting my horn. Didn't let me pass, so I held down my horn instead while purposely doing bursts of speed with my car to ruin whatever shots he was trying to get, while holding down my horn. The fancy car in the next lane over decided to slow down and let me merge to pass them, but the funnier part is not them having to deal with me no more because the dump truck was right on their butt after me. Folks just have no regard for others on the road sometimes, and it boggles me. So, like, I get it. I like to be a little bit of a creator myself. You want to take these pictures, put them out there, make your car and probably by extension you look all cool and whatnot. But yeah, you need to have at least a little bit of optics about the world that's existing around you. Especially when it comes to cars, I just have a policy of it's not worth upsetting somebody else. I mean, you just don't know if that person who's operating a multi-ton metal machine is maybe having the worst day of their life or something. Weem Sham commented, I freaking hate people who think they can just photo shoot wherever, whenever they like, and everyone else can suck it. You want to take photos on the highway? Do it in the early morning on the weekend. Oh no, that means you have to wake up early. That's really inconvenient. It's more convenient to do it in the afternoon when gobs of people are trying to make it home. Near where I live, there's a good-sized park, and behind it is all national forest. For dogs, the park is on leash, but the national forest isn't, so I'll take my dogs back there. Most of the time it's okay, but on the weekends, if the weather is nice, you'll have a ton of photographers out there taking pictures of people, and they just park their gear right on the trail and shoot away so you have to walk through them with 2 good-sized dogs on a leash. For some reason, they expect you to wait patiently while they take their clients' pictures. Then, once you get past them, here's another one and another one. It gets old quick. Our next story is, hurt my friend? Good luck with your education. Back in the before times when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled in my local junior college. A little into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could both save on rent. I'll call my girlfriend Lucy for the purposes of this post. One night, Lucy says she invited a friend from one of her classes for a game night. Sounded good to me. We invited a couple of other friends and it was a really fun night. Surprisingly, it turned out her friend, Sarah, was someone I knew from high school. We weren't close friends, but we knew each other and got along fine. After that night, Sarah was invited over pretty frequently for dinner, game nights, or to watch a movie. She even brought her boyfriend over a couple of times. I'll call him Jay, but he never quite fit in. He would be quiet and/or standoffish, wouldn't engage much, and just seemed like he never wanted to be there. It was clear no one really felt comfortable having him there, but we all invited him to be polite to Sarah. Fortunately, he only came over 2 or 3 times and found an excuse to refuse every other time. A month or 2 after this all started, Sarah called my girlfriend crying and asked if she could come over. Of course, we said yes. The story that was relayed was Jay was getting very upset with Sarah for coming over to our place so frequently and accused her of cheating on him. She never clarified if he thought she was cheating with me, Lucy, or both, but any option was ridiculous and never happened. But he confronted her and started verbally assaulting her, calling her all kinds of nasty names. At one point, she tried to walk past him to leave, and he shoved her back. This caused her to trip over a coffee table, fall, and get a huge bruise on her butt and lower back. Lucy told me about the bruise as Sarah had shown her. I didn't see it for myself. Sarah swore up and down that he had never physically assaulted her before, and she believed it was just an accident, but I was ticked. I wanted revenge. You don't mess with my friends and you don't assault women. I wanted to beat the crap out of him, but while I'm a very big guy, I've never been in a fight, and I'm not a violent person, but a revenge plan formed in my mind. At the time, I was working in the administration building of the school as a student employee. As part of my job, I could access anyone's student records, their fees, and their class schedule. The date was fast approaching that was the last possible day to drop or add classes without penalty or specific permission. So I looked Jay up in the system, got a student ID number and the other information that I needed, and put my plan into motion. On the last day to change schedules, I used the dedicated enrollment phones in the administration building. Internet class scheduling wasn't a thing that was set up yet, and canceled all of his classes. Not only that, but I went through and added every class I could find that had a course fee. If you owed a debt at the school, you couldn't get copies or your transcripts or anything else. Something that I didn't mention was that Jay was a foreign student and couldn't stay in the country if he wasn't enrolled with a certain number of units. I wish I could give more info about the fallout, but as I didn't want this traced back to me, I didn't tell anyone, nor did I pull up his records again for quite a while. I did get a little payoff though. Sarah was really worried about seeing him again. She had broken up with him the night after he pushed her, as they had an English class together on Tuesdays. She said that on Tuesday he was there, but there was also someone new standing in the class. He was standing there because there weren't enough seats. The teacher, seeing that there were more people than should be, held roll. And guess who wasn't on it? You're right, it was Jay. Apparently after I dropped all his classes, someone on the wait list got in. Jay tried to argue with the teacher, but as the teacher had the official class roster and Jay wasn't on it, there was nothing he could do. Sarah said she never saw Jay in that class again. I don't know much more about what happened. Lucy and I eventually broke up, so I didn't see Sarah very often after that. After a while, I did look up Jay's class schedule, and all of the classes with course fees were gone, but he didn't have any other classes on the books either. I wanted to assume he was kicked out of school, but I didn't try to confirm it. Either way, Sarah didn't have to have a class with him, and while he probably deserved more, he was definitely inconvenienced and possibly kicked out of school. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh, but then I remember he deserved it. Mess with me, but not my friends. I'd like to know what you guys think. Did OP go too far here? I mean, don't get me wrong, this guy laid his hands on his girlfriend and still got away with that. So certainly in some karmic way, they were very much due. But OP also basically ruined their entire college education. I'd like to know where most people kind of fall on the spectrum of too far, just right, not enough. Ivy Trink commented, definitely pro-revenge, OP. Unfortunately, you're telling your story to a bunch of people who couldn't fathom an existence without a mini computer disguised as a phone in their hands at the ready. This story is very plausible during the time mentioned. We had to wait in long lines, A to E, F to J, etc., to register for courses. The person at the end of the line had a computer and printed your schedule off for you, but few regular people had computers in their home. There was no reason not to trust that the printed schedule in front of you was accurate. You simply showed up for class. I worked in the transcripts office as a student worker back in the late 90s. I 100% had unfettered access to student information. Some Redditors forget that their experience isn't the only one that can be had. Our next story is how I diffused a parking lot situation. So I was pulling into a large shopping center's parking lot. I line up to back into a spot, but another car pulls in first. No big deal, I adjusted my angle and parked in a space between that car and a small SUV. As I open the door, the SUV's driver's window goes down and this lady starts freaking out because I parked right next to her. I was caught quite off guard to say the least. I thought maybe she knew me and it was a joke, but nope, she was genuinely ticked off. There are so many other open spots, why did you have to park right next to me? There was plenty of space between our cars, but she was absolutely beside herself. Mind you, I was already in a bit of a mood and had no desire to deal with this loony's nonsense, but I was also strangely fascinated. So I decided an appropriate response was in order. I'm here to pick up a prescription for my son who was in a car accident and might never walk again. Do you want to trade freaking problems? I even managed a slight catch in my voice without so much as thinking about it. Okay, that was a lie. I'm not talking little white lie, embellishment, stretching the truth, or anything of that nature. It was a flat-out, bold-faced, extra day in purgatory level of complete and total fallacy. I was actually there to pick up a gift card for my son who was not just in a car accident and plays flag football in a local adult league. I generally don't make this practice a habit, but the look of abject horror on her face as she sped away made it all worthwhile. I'm just glad she was alone in the car. Oh, I'm sorry I parked next to you, lady. I was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning I break my legs, and every afternoon I break my arms. At night I lay awake in agony until my heart attacks put me to sleep. Our next story is leaving a crammed parking lot. Today I was about to leave a parking lot that was pretty full. Well, 99.8% full, probably. As I walk, I sense a car following me from pretty close, obviously sensing it could take my spot. I've noticed the red car entering the area moments before. The shinny EV sound is humming right behind me, almost touching my calves. I know I have what the driver wants, my parking spot. Not that there's anything wrong with that, so I make a turn towards my lane. My car is 2/3 down the aisle and see right in front an older lady in a small beat-up car, like a Nissan Micra or something. She was obviously inside the parking area before the shinny EV following me because I just walked past the only entryway at the pay booth. So I gently point to her, "My spot is yours," but I'm not certain she saw me. Meanwhile, the shinny EV is still following me even closer, sensing a new opponent, I guess. Once inside my car, I gently pulled backward with a curved path to block the EV. It had to back off for me to have enough space to leave my space. I then motioned for the older lady to take my spot. She thanked me but said, "What about him?" "You were here first, madam," I replied. She entered the space with a huge smile, and I gently pulled away looking in the mirror at the shinny red Model 3 from Tesla. Next time, don't act so entitled. Am I a weirdo if I'm in this situation and my only focus would be packing my stuff up in my car and just leaving? Like, can I just get out of here safely without obtaining bumper-to-bumper scratches as these people fight over the parking spot? Like, would I be the weird one for not going out of my way to fight for this old lady to have that parking spot, but just let whatever happens and just go home? Hodwin2571 commented, "If I don't like someone stalking my parking spot, I walk across a couple of rows of parked cars and dump them, then come back to mine for the benefit of the random person nearby." No Sense 3190 commented, "When I was in college, I had very early classes several days a week, so I would get a very close parking spot on those days. I would also leave my lunch in my car so I wouldn't have to carry it around. People would constantly get upset after following me to my car to nab a close spot when I went to grab my lunch and walk back to campus." Our next story is, "Don't let us stay in your Airbnb after accepting our booking? Fine, get banned from the app then." Hi, read a very similar story to this, even down to the city and occasion, so I figured I would post mine here too. In around 2019, I had a friend coming to visit for Paddy's Day. Now, I'm Irish, but he's actually from Hong Kong. Given that I'm local, I said that I would take care of booking accommodations, etc. I went on, and of course, as usual, everything was like $1,000. Welcome to Dublin. Obviously, things were maxed out due to it being Paddy's weekend, but I found one spot in Blackrock, which isn't in the city center, but it's only a few stops away on the DART, Dublin Area Rapid Transit, that was going for €68 per night. I booked it right then and there. The following morning, I got a notification from Airbnb saying the host wanted to up the price by €288.28, and if I would accept that. I clicked no and figured, hey, he's already accepted our booking. I don't have to say yes to this. I waited a few weeks until the weekend in question, and then it came. My friend landed at Dublin Airport, we made our way to Blackrock, got to the door, rang the doorbell, and nothing. There was no car in the driveway, nobody was home. We hung around for 40 minutes until the host arrived, and he wouldn't even look us in the eye. I say, "Hi, we have a booking to stay here this weekend?" And he mumbled something about how no one was staying there, sorry, and he went inside. Well, I got straight onto Airbnb. They offered us our money back, and I said, "No, that's not good enough. Everywhere else is half a grand. What are we going to do with $68? They offered us double, and I still said, "No, we need a place to stay." So they booked us into a lovely house elsewhere that was closer to the city center. But that's not all. I made an official complaint about the host and how he screwed us over, and they booted him off the app. For trying to fleece a couple of 20-something lads, he had to stop renting his place out entirely. I'm a petty guy, so every couple of months I randomly think about this and check to see if he's back online yet. As of May 2025, he's still not, so I've cost him over 6 years of Airbnb rent and counting. You love to see it. You know, I'm just saying, if this is a place where renting a place for a night is close to like half a grand, they probably still don't have a problem finding somebody to rent that place out that isn't on Airbnb. I mean, there's not just Airbnb, right? And there's like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, I don't know what they have in Dublin. Not a surprise though that Airbnb booted them off after they had to pay that much to make up for the mistake. I mean, if there was ever a value lost threshold before we would boot somebody off of our app, I think they immediately already went double or triple past that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy story of revenge, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.